The Amazing Women Speak podcast, inspiring and motivating every Black woman to own, honor, and execute her amazing, individually and collectively, as it was established at birth.
Good evening and happy Sunday. So I'm Crystal L. Gunn, and welcome to another episode of Amazing Women Speak. This has to be a really great episode coming up because technology was doing its thing, trying to keep us from getting on here today. But we are here. We cannot be stopped. But while you are getting settled in for this show, hit the share button and share Amazing Women Speak so your friends and followers can get in on this conversation. Now, our discussion this evening is aimed at liberating Black women from the heavy chains of guilt that often come from juggling personal ambitions, community responsibilities, the constant strive for protection, and all of the hats that we wear. This episode is a journey of healing and self-discovery. It's a call to action for Black women everywhere, despite all the juggling and the bullshit bar, to reclaim their power and own their amazing with confidence and grace. So this evening, let's go deep yet again and talk about it so we can release the guilt. Michele, thank you for saying yes to Amazing Women Speak. Thank you for being dope. Thank you for being my BFF. And thank you for curating these conversations the way that only you can do.
Good evening. Good evening. It is beyond my pleasure to be here with you, having these conversations. Another dope one is on deck for tonight, one that we all need to pay attention to, find ways to find our own journey to healing, to addressing what it is to own and hold guilt in ways that is destroying our fiber, destroying our gift. But we can't have this conversation without having amazing guests to help us lift up and elevate. So we have to go deep. Our time got cut short. I always say this is the fastest hour of the day, and technology tried to rob us of a few, but it will not prevent us from having the conversation that needs to be had. God will make space for what needs to be said tonight. Facebook, we invite you to be a part of this conversation. Drop your questions, your thoughts in chat, and be a part of this conversation. And we cannot do it without introducing our dynamic guest. Come on and introduce yourself.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be an excellent conversation. My name is Alicia Dalton. I am a wife, a mom, author, speaker, healthcare executive, all the hats. All the hats.
Really excited.
And I get to say my soror this time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And yet somehow you both felt compelled to wear green. But we'll talk
I
about
know,
that
right?
after the show. Right. Talk about that after the show. It's all sisterhood and it's all love. And I'm grateful to be in the company of both of you. So we'll learn more about the hats you wear. But Alicia, every week we talk about how time is short in these conversations. So we like to launch deep because we have no time to stand in shallow waters. So as we begin to think about guilt, I want to ask the same question I asked our guest last week. What did it cost you? What has been the price of holding, living into, and maintaining what guilt has done?
That's a loaded question. Guilt, I think it holds you hostage. And it's something that if you keep carrying, it not only affects you physically, mentally, but it affects generations to come. So I think it's real important to kind of practice forgiving as a journey in order to release the guilt.
Right. And the hardest person is you.
Correct.
Right. We can forgive others really quickly, or we can find a path to forgiving others. Maybe not quickly, but we can find a path. But what does it mean to forgive self?
I think it's a practice. I think that you have to be intentional about it. And then realize that I think it's the enemy's job to rob us, right? So we can't let him get in front of that. So we have to realize our worth. There's a quote in one of the books that I wrote. It's by Priscilla Shire. And she said, everything that you need, God already is. If you can walk in that and keep that at the forefront of your mind, it makes it easier to forgive. It makes it easier to forgive yourself and release the guilt that we're talking about today.
That's powerful. That's powerful. He already is.
He already is.
I love that. Mm-hmm. So on this platform, I have challenged Crystal many times. So Crystal, I need to invite you into this conversation as well, right? Because you feel this call to respond to being all things to all folks in the community, this call on your life. And because of that call in that way, you stretch yourself beyond. You give when you should rest, and you give out of sometimes void, out of guilt of trying to erase the generational cost, out of possible guilt trying to change the narrative because you have Nile. What has been the cost of guilt for you?
Time.
Say more.
Wow.
Trying to be all of those things for everyone else, I lose time for me and for those that are closest to me that I love. And it's hard to figure out or to balance the trade-off. Like if I do all of those things, then I can't do these things. Or I can't spend the time with the people that are dearest to me. So yeah, time.
Right. And so before we can get to the journey, right, like I always like to take a step back before we can get to the journey of the release, right? Like I really like for us to unpack and help our listeners think about the cost of, right? And so you talked about all of these hats you wear, mother, author, right? So what is the balance? How are you, or the inability to sometimes balance that, right? Like Crystal talked about the cost. What does that look like for you?
Well, I have to say, I agree with Crystal, time. And I think that makes us feel guilty, right? Because you can't get it back. But what I've had to learn to do is you can't pour from an empty cup. So I have to try to do things that make me happy. Like today, I went and got a pedicure. So self-care is so important. And it sounds so cliche as I kind of want us to have a different word for it because we're always talking about self-care. But I think it's
Alicia,
really
we have a different word for it. We call it maintenance. Right? Like it's the things
like
that you maintain, right? Like it's just the things that you do.
Yes.
Your self-care needs to be deeper than. So we flipped the head on that a while ago.
I like it.
Call it self-care, right? Like we're gonna call it maintenance. It's what we do.
Yeah. Because you want to show up, as your best self, as your best personal self. And part of that is maintenance. I find a lot of joy in caring for my family and spending family time, but I also really realize that I have to step back and do things that charge me up too.
Right. So you talked about one of your hats being an author, right? And as a person who has dabbled in that space, you have to break away, right? You have to go and sometimes it's pure solitude to connect with the thoughts to get it on paper. So how do you pull away from the rest of the things to give into the thing that's going to ultimately be a gift for others?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because writing 2 books during the pandemic was, first of all, I can't believe it. But what I did is I wrote late at night when everyone else was resting. And that's how I was able to kind of plug through to the finish line. So that's how I got it. It did.
Right? Like it's the cycle,
it
right?
Did.
And that's one of the things I want us to pay attention to. It's the cycle. So we continue to give and give and give. And sometimes because we get so good at it, we don't even realize that we're giving from an empty space, that we're pouring from an empty cup. And so you talked about right, like the many ways that guilt shows up physically, emotionally, right? So some of the physical signs, how did you begin to pay attention to, what were some of those? And Chris, I'm going to invite you to share this, right? Because it's important that folks hear this part of your journey as well, because there is a cost.
Yeah. To be honest, I felt scared all the time, afraid, looking over my shoulder. What's going to happen next? I got through this hump. What's coming next? What's up for me next time? And I didn't really realize I was walking in fear until I became a real grown up. And I started to realize, oh, that was fear. Oh, that was insecurity, So that, yeah, it showed up for me physically, like in my gut, like deep down in my gut, but I just couldn't pinpoint what that was until I matured.
I love that. Crystal.
Oh, stress, anxiety, saying you need to sit down because, you got the heart palpitations, body going crazy, right? And so putting these, again, looking back out of the guilt of not being able to do a thing and not being able to impact the people, putting these unrealistic.
Wait, so I have to stop you and challenge you, because you were impacting people. You just can't impact all the people, Mike. Okay.
But putting all of these unrealistic goals, and I remember us, you and I going out to dinner, and we were talking about this, and you says, but you get to determine the due dates. You get to determine when those things get to happen. So why do you stress yourself out about it and putting these unrealistic dates and unmanageable expectations on yourself? And where I heard you when you said it, but it was a lot harder to actually put those words into action. And the result was the continued stress, and again, the continued anxiety, till it was like, God was like, okay, well, you need to sit down for a second. And I'm going to break your body down to make sure that you do. So.
Yeah, right. Like guilt can present as this invisible thing.
Yeah.
It's happening to you, happening around you, but you don't identify it as guilt, right? And so you keep pushing and you keep stretching because you don't want to acknowledge, right? But there's freedom when we begin to talk about and name it in a way that we can build strategies to change the conversation. There's a way of accomplishing greatness and releasing yourself from the idea that you weren't designed to do all of the things all of the time. So how do you invite those that you love into the conversation that something has to be different in order for you to push a little further? What was that conversation like with your family, Alicia?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yep. So, right, like as you begin to move into, I need to release some of this. I've got to change what's happening so that I can be more present, so that I can give where I need to give, right? Because oftentimes it's our children, it's our spouses, significant others that are impacted first.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So you need to then make a change. And we sometimes invite our families into that conversation because things have to look different.
Yeah.
Did you have any form of that conversation with your family, and how did you invite them into that? Because that's that first step towards release.
Yeah, I don't think I had a formal conversation, but I do things like in little bits, like I need a mommy time out, taking that time for the maintenance, but not a formal conversation. No, I have not had that.
Crystal, somebody who does the thing that you do, and we know that Niall is watching, right? Did you have formal, informal? And then how do we begin to name it, right? Like how do we begin to formalize, make it formal, in a way that they can then identify it for themselves when they find themselves repeating the patterns of their greatest heroes, i.e. the two of you?
Oh, wow. So never had the formal conversation. I probably need to. Yeah, note to self. That's a hard question because not having
Yeah.
that conversation and then knowing, like you said, them how your children look up to you, they will repeat that cycle. We talked about breaking the cycles before, and I can remember like going through, so years ago, now I was probably 7 or 8, and me going through that financial storm and everything that was going on in my life and saying to God, this is not, I'm not right now the person that I want to be to my child or the
Mm,
person that I think she should look up to. And now that we're saying this, I'm like, I'm wondering how much of all of that I do right now is making sure that I am somebody that she can look up to.
mm, mm,
That's maturity, though. I was just listening to something recently about how guilt and shame shows up, really from things that happen in your childhood. And sometimes it's because you had a parent that made you feel guilty about, I put a roof over your head, I feed you. Well,
Hmm.
you're actually supposed to do that, right?
right.
And then that, the continuing to hear things like that. And listen, I think our parents did the best they could, right? But
Hmm.
that is coming from immature parenting, and that is what causes that cycle, right?
Right.
So I know me personally try to say, I'm not going to do that when I become a parent, and I even had this conversation with my mom, God rest her soul, that I have to parent for today. You parented for your time. So it's
Right.
not anything you did wrong.
Right.
You did your best at the time. So I think, us showing up as mature parents is important because you want to leave a legacy that is better than where you came from, which is how it's supposed to be anyway. You're always supposed to leave the next generation in a better place. So,
True.
yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like, and so that guilt, if we, again, I'm a strong believer in naming things,
Mhm.
because until you can do that, you will not be able to fully address whatever it is. Right. And in naming it, part of it is facing the ugly truth. And out of guilt, we give more than we should.
Hmm.
Right. We receive more sometimes than we should.
Yes.
And we certainly accept things because we need to ... right? And so out of guilt, we have put ourselves in financial strains trying to provide for our children, right? We have had conversations that maybe we should not have had, or the way that we had them, we should not have had them that way, out of guilt, trying to change the narrative. But until you unpack that childhood trauma,
Mm-hmm.
right? Until you unpack and understand those childhood stories, all of them aren't about trauma, right? Even something that appeared to be good for you in that time can show up in a way that's working against you as an adult, right?
Mm-hmm.
I recall as a single parent trying to ensure that my children had what others had. And out of guilt of being a single parent, right, went a little further than I should have at the time,
Hmm.
spent
Yeah.
a little more than I had, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guilt, even in the best intentions. How do
Mm-hmm.
you begin to release yourself from that, knowing that you may have to hand out some no's? How do you begin to release that?
I've gotten better at handing out no's. Why that laugh? Like, I've gotten a little better. Is that better? I've gotten a little better at handing out the no's, and to the point where I can now see and sometimes change the answer. Okay, yes, it's a thing that I know that I'm going to do, but okay, I have to push the due date out for it. So naming the thing and seeing it and being able to slowly change the way I respond, I'm getting better at it. But it's a process though,
It
right?
is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
I heard
continuous.
someone say that their New Year's resolution was nope, I'm like, okay, that means you want to say no. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say no. I think that we as Black women are so used to filling up the calendar, taking on everything, that it's almost silent, like you said. You don't even realize you're doing it. And this is a weird example, but I had anemia. I was pushing through life exhausted and didn't realize I was exhausted until I went to the doctor and I had to get a iron infusion. After I got the iron infusion, I text my husband a picture, a meme of a superwoman. I was like, I didn't even know I was tired. I was like, I can do this now. I was like, I have been operating on just low level for years, decades almost.
Right.
So I think we're just used to pushing through. And I think we need to collectively work together to stop that.
Yeah.
I love one of the things I love about my husband is he knows how to rest better than anybody. I'm like, oh, another nap? Okay. And I'm like, shoot, I got another 5 loads of laundry. But I am learning to rest, and it has helped me. Now that I want to learn to rest, I'm having trouble sleeping. That's a whole nother segment.
Right.
Yes.
But yeah, learning to rest is important.
Yeah,
really
right.
is.
And part of that is releasing that guilt. That rest is okay. Just acknowledging, right? Like rest is okay.
Yeah.
And so then the mind gets to spin about what's not being done.
Yes.
That rest.
Yeah, the dust bunny in the corner that you want to get. Just one more thing before you go to bed. So yeah.
The other piece I think of that though is like I'm really good at saying these things to other people. Like my mother will say, well, I didn't get such and such done today. And I'm like, oh yeah, it'll be there tomorrow. But that doesn't work for me. Like I need someone constantly saying that thing to me because I got this list of things that still need to be done. Maybe I just get 3 more things done off the list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How many things related to Crystal or related to Alicia are on that list? Right? How do you put yourself on the list?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, last Wednesday, and I have made a promise to myself that every 7 to 10 days, and I hate that I'm even going to say this next part, based on my calendar, right? Within every 7 to 10 days, I went to a sound bath healing over at Bloom Transformation Center, and it was the best thing ever. And I have promised myself every 7 to 10 days, and depending upon when they have the class.
Oh, there we go.
I know.
Oh, we can always count on Miss Harper. Plug in there. Oh my gosh.
But I am going because I just realized that I came out so much better than I went into that class. And that if I don't start doing more of those things for me, I'm ultimately at the end of the day, I'm not going to be to be able to do the very thing that is part of my assignment in this life.
Yeah.
So there is trying to balance. Okay.
Yep. So, a couple of things. One, I need to know when the last day you went so I can count the 7 to 10.
Oh boy.
It was just this past Wednesday.
Okay, Wednesday. Okay, that's helpful.
God,
the second thing
put a ticker on her calendar. Wow.
The second thing is, right, like, and this is to both of you, when you think about the things that you need to do, people would be grateful for the half of you, right? Like you keep thinking that you have to give. No, most people with your gifts would be grateful for the half, right? While you continue to try to stretch yourself to 100%. We would be grateful for the half of the gift of you. You beginning to recognize that sometimes even half is more than you should be giving. Releasing yourself from that guilt, right? The acknowledgement that you deserve that release.
Yeah.
That because what comes on the other side of that is a greater you. And then you deciding to the degree, to the amount that you give to others. in a way that allows you to keep giving your gifts the way that you have been giving them.
Mm-hmm.
Stop thinking that you have to have all of the things, because again, we would be grateful for 1/10 of your time, of your
Mm-hmm.
talents,
Mm-hmm.
of your space, right? So releasing guilt and practicing some self-care, knowing that you said yes to 3 events instead of 7, impact was had,
I feel
right?
so seen right now.
You can't wear
Ooh.
as many hats as the 2 of you wear,
Yeah.
right? And think that somewhere on that to-do list, if it's on there, if you're on it at all, that you continue to push yourself down because of the pull for your gifts.
Mm. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
For everybody listening, if you don't have a best friend like this that's speaking the truth to you and on your phone telling you it's time for another sound bath healing, get you a new best friend, please. Because I know the text is coming this week. Like,
Wow.
Right. So, right. Like, and for Alicia, when I think about, again, women who wear the powerful hats that you wear, right? Recognizing that you have to have this long-term strategy. So when Crystal identifies guests for this show, one of the things she does is provide the list. Tell us where your gift lies. Tell us about the conversations you want to have. Why did you say yes to this topic?
It spoke to me. I was actually thinking about this today. And one of the things I realized is that when something bad or adverse happens to you or me, we feel guilty and it wasn't your fault. For instance, at 14 years old, I was raped. And I blame myself for years. Why didn't I just look out the peephole before I opened the door? You know, why wasn't I more careful? I felt so guilty that I begged my mom not to tell my dad because I thought he would be mad at me. And I was like, wow, that's another side of guilt. Not that you did something wrong. Somebody did something wrong to you and you feel guilty for it. That's heavy. That's heavy.
Yeah.
And from that caused insecurity, lack of self-worth, not showing up as my best self, being timid, just all the things. And so once you realize that when something happens to you and it's not your fault, you still have to have self-forgiveness. I guess that's where I'm getting at. Like, that wasn't my fault. And so I can't carry that. And I think when you carry the guilt, the shame, the burdens, you're never going to be in the present. In the present moment is where your power is. You can't keep looking in the rear view mirror, right? So I think that once we're releasing the guilt, we're able to be more intentional about being present in the present moment and enjoying what you have right now.
So first, I want to thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that part of your story, right? You're the why Crystal holds these spaces for us to have these conversations, because somebody is going to get better today because of your vulnerability, right? And oftentimes our listeners are coming on here in broken places, trying to find healing and answer a community, right? And our women are either really far through, I'm getting through this, or they've gotten to the other side and they're sharing their reflection, right? So for the woman that is sitting there who's still holding that level of guilt, to move yourself to the present, how did you get there? Share some of that with the woman who is listening, trying to break free.
Well, I think it's kind of what I opened up with. Everything I need, God already is. So, I just had to continue to, utilize the faith that I grew up with. You know, I had a mom who was a worshiper and she was full of faith. I watched that. And so I already knew that the thing that happened to me wasn't my future. It didn't define me. And so I would just tell people, lean into the good Lord. Lean into it. Cast your cares onto him. He knows. He already knew what it was going to happen. And just realize your self-worth. You know, say, wake up and say, I'm worthy of this day. You know your worth and walk into it.
I love that. I love that. Even in our most dark, challenging times, there's purpose, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What the world meant for evil, God meant for your good. And you come on the other side of this and you get to share your story and empower other women.
Yeah. And it gives him the glory. That's
right?
the ultimate thing.
Right?
You know, and don't question the adversity. I just recently posted about this too. Don't question the adversity. Just realize, you know, where you are now and realize he's still a good God.
Check his record. Check his record.
He has receipts, okay?
Right?
Yes.
You better believe it. And it never, ever, ever goes into overtime.
No.
It's his timing, right? It was his timing for you to be delivered from that.
Yeah.
It was his timing for you to be able to tell your story to others. It was his timing to teach you to release that guilt so that you could be present for the gifts that he has for you today. Thank you. Thank you for every woman who has experienced that, to know that there is something on the other side. Minister said today, do not do your future a disservice by bringing along your past.
That was a whole word.
A whole word.
Yes.
A whole word. Do not.
So this is another quote that I want to share. Every woman that finally figured out her worth has picked up her suitcase of pride and boarded a flight to freedom, which landed in the Valley of Change.
Wow.
Shannon Alder.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like that light bulb. When you realize, it's like, oh, I'm good. You know, I got this. And I'm not my past. I'm not what they did to me.
Absolutely. And the first step to the release is being able to identify what are the things that are holding you.
Yes.
What's the
Make
guilt?
a list. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so hard. You know, Alicia, on the show, we've talked several times. The hardest conversation you will ever have is the one with the person that's standing in the mirror. We have mastered lying to ourselves. We have mastered telling another story instead of owning and embracing the one that's standing in front of you in order to get to the other side. In order to do that, you've got to release some guilt. You've got to release some guilt. You've got to offer some no's and give yourself some yeses.
Yes.
You've got to break away and do the hard work. And hear Alicia's story. It's hard work.
Yeah.
Hear Crystal's story. It's hard work, right? I like to say, and I've said many times on this show, when the word says, I can do all things, God did not intend for you to do all of the things. He did not. That's not what he meant. Not what he meant. So we can take off these capes of having to be superwoman and be a super pause woman. Those two words
that's
don't
a t-shirt
together, right? They stand Mary Evans. Mary Evans, right? Like, I give credit. I own that knot. She talked about breaking that word apart and understanding you are a super woman. Yeah. So the release, Crystal, sound bath. So I know you and I know you well. And I know we'll push 7 days to 10, and then 10 will become 11. How do we, right? Chris, I want you to answer this first. How do you begin to build your own self-accountability to hold to the thing that you know is what God needs for the next thing?
You kind of broke up. Ask the question again. It's technology. Or maybe trying to get me out of answering.
How do you build self-accountability, right? To do the thing that you know God needs you to do to get ready for the thing that God wants you to do next. Because again, I know you. 10 will become 11. 11 will become 15.
Right. So for me, it has to be, I have to have it on my calendar. And so putting it on the calendar to say, okay, tomorrow, checking the dates for this week that they're doing the class and scheduling, and then putting it on the calendar again, because if it's not on my calendar, it really falls off and I don't get it done. So that becomes part of the accountability, actually seeing the task to look at the date and then make the date. The second piece is continuing to start over and saying, okay, it's been 7 days. I have to get something on the calendar this week, and knowing that I'm not going to get it right every single time.
Yeah.
But making the commitment to me because I'm worth it.
Yeah.
To make sure that I continue to do the maintenance and the tune-ups necessary in order to continue to walk this journey.
Right? Like Alicia said, I am worthy.
Yeah.
I am worthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. In another episode, we'll unpack why taking care of you is a task. But I won't go there today. I won't go there today. So, Alicia, how do you begin to build self-accountability? Right? It's great to have an accountability partner. It's great to be surrounded, right? Like we talk about check your tribe. If the women that you have around you aren't encouraging you to be your best self, if they're talking about what you can do for them more than what you can do for yourself, check your tribe.
Yeah.
In the meantime, how do we build self-accountability as we begin to release the guilt of whatever is holding you back?
Yeah. So the first thing that came to my mind when you asked that question is really making yourself a priority. So you got to do that before you put it on the calendar.
I'm gonna need y'all to back up off me for that.
Prioritize yourself. We prioritize work, right? We prioritize our children. We prioritize all the things and everybody else. But you have to prioritize yourself.
Yeah. And I like, Krista, where you were going, right? Giving yourself all the grace.
Yes.
Have as many day ones as you need to, right? Have as many day ones as you need to. We may pause, but we shall not quit.
Yes.
When you hear me say, give grace, what bubbles up for you, Alicia?
Self-compassion. Self-love. And a journey, daily activity, daily practicing forgiveness. And I mean for the small things too, like the person who cut you off on the road, forgive that.
Right.
Just forget it. The person that cut in front of you at TJ Maxx.
Because the lines are always so long.
Just forget it. And also, I've learned to say, oh, I was next. Yeah, you cut in front of me, but I was actually next.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Show up for yourself. I've been telling my daughter this. Show up for yourself. Advocate for yourself.
Yeah, right. Like oftentimes we've been conditioned, we've been socialized to suffer in silence.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just like one of the things you said earlier today about it being silent. It's like high blood pressure. Like you don't know you have it. Maybe, it's bubbling over there. I was on a job that was so incredibly stressful because the management they were just mean and driven by not God. I was at work and I was out marketing the work that we did for seniors in the District of Columbia. I'm marketing to a clinic. As I'm pulling up at the clinic, my nose is bleeding profusely out of the blue. I was like, I think I have to check myself in at the place I'm marketing to. And I did. And you know what the doctor told me? You're taking care of everybody else but yourself. And I quickly left that job. I have never had a nosebleed like that. It was like a faucet. And I said, this job, I'm taking this on physically. No, ma'am, Pam. No, we're not doing this. No, that was a wake-up call for me.
Yeah, literally.
Don't let this anything hold you hostage like that.
Yeah,
it's not worth
it. Killing you. Literally killing you.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we don't even see it, right? Like we allow jobs to kill us, death by 1,000 cuts.
Yep.
Toxic relationships, death by 1,000 cuts, right? And we create excuses for other folks' behavior. And we allow the guilt of doing something differently to, like you said, hold us hostage. Hold us hostage. So the beginning of this conversation around the release is really acknowledging what you deserve, the freedoms that come with that, and really exploring whatever that is and giving yourself as much latitude as you need to try on what you need to try on, to feel different about who you are. The greatest gift you have to offer isn't your time. It isn't your talents. It isn't your resources. The greatest gift you have to offer is you back to you. And that's step one. So COVID, not one, but 2 books.
Yeah.
Tell us why.
I ran from it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't think I was worth it. Like, who would want to read anything that, but my co-author chased me down. She kept asking me, and I was like, And I had a dream that I was supposed to write this book. And I went to her. Her name is Sharon Lawrence. I said, okay, let's do it. Almost done with the first book. And I think, that's it. I did it, God. He was like, now you're going to write your memoir. And he gave me the title right there. I Can't Keep Calm. He gave me Beauty for Ashes. And then I got excited. I was like, oh my God, that is an amazing title, God. Thank you.
Wow.
So yeah, I knew that the Lord told me I was going to have to give my testimony. I always thought it would be on Testimony Tuesday at the pulpit at church. Who's got a testimony? Oh, okay,
right.
I'll give mine. That's what I thought. I literally did. And then what really got the ball rolling is that I was asked to be in a documentary about women who cope with trauma and how they use their faith to do so. And from that, the first book, and then another book. And then I thought, okay, I did the books. That's it. No, you got to go to book signings, interviews, book clubs. I was like, I thought I would just be done with it, but then it just opened up the door to so many other different things that all I really want to do is help someone. I just really want my story to bless someone else and possibly not go through what I had to go through, and it's doing that. And I'm really happy about that. I like I said, it was not on my to-do list. I ran from it. But when you get calls or emails from people, a woman in a shelter saying that book helped her get through rough times. When you walk in a coffee shop and actually see someone reading your book, that blew my mind right there. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, it's
Tell us the title of the first book.
The Let Go, Elevate Your Destiny and Forgive.
Tell us about it.
So myself and Sharon Lawrence came together and we just started talking about why it's important to forgive. And so we just shared our story. And one of the biggest takeaways for me is that I had to release the guilt and work on forgiveness in order for me to be at the great place that I am today. If I kept walking around in sadness and fear and maybe a little bitterness, I wouldn't be able to show up as my best self to help anybody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically why we wrote that book, is to say, listen, sometimes you just have to let things go, right? And it's a process. It maybe not happen, in one day. And that's why we kind of started saying it's a practice. You have to do this daily, find things to forgive, like really work on it, right?
Mm.
And so that's what that book is about. And then, like I said, almost at the end of writing the Let Go, God gave me the title for my memoir. And it's a lot of some of the same things in there, but I really just go from my childhood and how God brought me through different things, different adversities, and where I am today on the other side of the thing, happy, whole. I can't keep calm. He gave me beauty for ashes. I smile every day. I walk in joy, peace, and just love every day.
I love that.
How did writing your memoir help you along your journey?
That's a good question. I had no idea how therapeutic it would be. I worked in behavioral health, for over 2 decades. So I know what mental health and not, but to actually sit and write yourself, I actually discovered why I was afraid to speak. I never would have thought that I would get on anyone's live feed and speak, because my voice was minimized after I was raped at 14.
Right.
The very next day after that happened, I had to go to class. I was in a fog, and the teacher, I forgot what class it was, but the teacher asked us to read certain parts out loud. And I was still so broken, the words wouldn't come out. And he yelled at me and made me feel so stupid. That's why I tell educators, you don't know what somebody is going through.
Right.
I could not even get the words out. I just picked the book up and I just stared at it. And he was like, would you read? Like, just yelling at me. So I was not only embarrassed, that made me more fearful. So as I'm writing the memoir, I'm like, oh, that's why I'm afraid to talk in front of people. It was like different things like that happened writing Crystal. So it was very therapeutic. And I actually think and feel like a better woman because I took the time to do that process.
Yeah. The journey to self-discovery.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So very, very powerful. You said something else that I think is important to lift up to our listeners, right? We all have a story.
Yeah.
Why should I do a thing? Somebody else is already doing it. That story has already been told. Mm-hmm. God will make room for your gift. Yeah. Don't deny him the opportunity to do what he does best. Alicia has told you she ran, but you cannot outrun your assignment. You cannot. You absolutely cannot. And the way that you told your particular story resonated with the woman that was in the DV shelter. Yeah. Changed the life of a woman sitting in a coffee shop. If you don't think your story matters, start by telling it. And tell it to yourself. The greatest book you ever will write is the one that starts with a journal. You have a right to tell your story to you, and you will discover how it can impact somebody else. I told you this is the fastest hour of your day. The fastest hour. I thank both of you for sharing, being vulnerable, to opening up, and to allowing other women to hear that there is healing in the release. Alicia, how can people find you? How can folks find your amazing books?
Oh, thank you. Well, they're on Amazon. On Instagram, I can be reached at Alicia Dalton _author. I also have another Instagram page called Sweet Stations, and it's about all the things I love: coffee, cooking, all that good stuff, traveling.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much. Tell us the name of the books again.
The Let Go, Elevate Your Destiny, and Forgive. And I Can't Keep Calm. He Gave Me Beauty for Ashes.
And so every time you say that, I just CeCe Winans song in my head.
Yeah.
Beauty for Ashes. It's such a powerful song. I look forward to picking up your books and adding them to my library. There's a gift in your story, I am sure, and I can't wait to discover the piece of it that God intended for me. So I thank you for being obedient to the assignment God put on your life, to pick up the pen and to share it in a way that is impacting lives. That's what this platform is about. It is about bringing women on who are willing to share their stories, where we can laugh, we can cry, and most importantly, we can heal. Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening, this is your platform. This is your place. If you aren't finding yourself here on Sunday morning, after evening, wherever you are in this country, in this world, join us. You are missing your blessing. One of the things that I tell Crystal every week, I'm very grateful that she created a space that all we do is uplift. We will challenge each other and love each other to our greatness. I'm grateful to you, Crystal. You continue to be obedient to the call that God has put on your life. You, even out of your lack, are changing lives to women who have never been in your space. Find that sound bath to your healing so you can continue to heal others. I'm very grateful for the work that you do. I'm very grateful that I know that you are an amazing woman. Alicia, thank you. Thank you for your vulnerability again. Thank you for sharing that part of your story that allows us to think about healing and knowing that it is a possibility. And whatever we don't have, God already is. Crystal.
You know, when I originally did this episode, we were supposed to do this topic in 2023 and had to reschedule. And there was 2 guests on that original episode, and the other guest could not make it this time. And I truly believe all things happen for our greater good. And me being able to sit in the seat that I sat in today is really part for my greater good. So I'm a firm believer in that we are here in this life for elevation. We are not in competition with one another just to be better than we were yesterday. And so part of Amazing Women Speak, is to help us be better than we were yesterday. And I am forever grateful to you, Michele, for saying yes and curating the conversations the way that you do. It's just masterful. You can back up off of me some, but I am forever grateful to call you my best friend. Thank you so much. Alicia, thank you for being as transparent as you were today. Thank you for sharing your story with the world. Someone once said to me, you have to remember, everybody's either going through something, been through something, or about to go through something. So giving that grace really is a duty that we have to give to other people. But as Michele talked about it, it's our duty to give it to ourselves first.
Yeah.
So hopefully I can continue to do that day after day, continuing to say, Crystal, give yourself some grace and take care of me first. My name is Crystal Gunn. I am a Black woman, and I own my amazing. Michele.
Thank you. It is always a pleasure to sit in this seat, to be able to have these conversations with amazing women. Regardless of the topic, I get better every week because of the ways in which women share their stories. Something gets dropped into my heart, into my spirit that I get to pass along in this journey called life. So thank you for your deposit in my life, Alicia. Very, very grateful for the gift of you. My name is Michele Harper. I am a Black woman, and without apology, I own my amazing. Miss Dalton.
I'm so full. I am so full, and I'm so very, very grateful to have this opportunity to just commune with you guys, chat with you guys. And it was just my prayer that anything I say, just to bless someone else. That's really all I want to do, is to help someone else along their journey and to maybe soften the fall a little bit or help them not go through what they go through.
Well
So
done.
I am appreciative of this
Well
time.
done.
And I am Alicia Dalton. I'm a Black woman, and I own my amazing.
Please find Amazing Women Speak on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and Spotify, and LinkedIn. And look at the past episodes. Find the topic that speaks to your soul. I promise you, it will uplift you and make a difference in your life. And then share that episode with somebody else. Be a blessing. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you to those who tune in each and every week. And next month is Women's History Month. And we will speak with some dope and amazing women doing great things who are Black history and who are making women's history every single day. So we will see you again next Sunday at 7 p.m. Peace.